Hello, welcome. Lucius Conway here, certified addiction recovery coach and peer recovery support specialist at Recovery Coaching Services of New York. I'm the manager, CEO thereof, and here is a bit of my story. In the tradition of 12-step programs, they call it qualification. I'm going to try to keep this brief, but I do want you to have some personal knowledge about me from the horse's mouth, lest you look at me now and disregard that headshot that's the before picture on our homepage. That was the worst of who I had become. It began when I was 7 years old. I got my first drink. I was given my first drink by my dad, who was a truck driver, and he came from a family of drinkers. As a matter of fact, his uncle was a bootlegger in River Rouge, Michigan, way back when, long before my time. And when I came along, I was his firstborn son, and my dad was a tough guy, and I had 5 sisters, and I wasn't so tough. I'm still not. But at any rate, he gave me my first drink of, I think it was Johnny Walker Black Scotch and half and half. And I started drinking kind of from that time forward. That's the first drink I remember ever taking and actually getting drunk or feeling drunk outside of myself. And that followed through the years, because somebody was always having a party in my family, adults, either on my maternal side or paternal side. There were drinkers, heavy drinkers on both sides. So there was always hard liquor and beer and wine around during those parties, which happened almost, if not weekly or monthly. And so there was always opportunity to get something to drink, and I did. That escalated to smoking marijuana at age 12. I was introduced to it by a cousin, a friend, who thought, hey, this is going to be cool. And the theme seemed to be outside of yourself. Just be outside of yourself so you can be yourself, which really, it doesn't make any sense in retrospect, but I'm 50 years old now. And this was at 12 years old. What did I know? I thought I knew everything. Doesn't every 12-year-old know everything? Anyway, that escalated. I came to New York originally to perform, and I did do some performing, and I was reasonably successful at it, but it wasn't satisfying. The idea of a casting couch and the whole performance thing kind of, I came from a little Midwest place where if you had talent, it was recognized, it was embraced, it was encouraged. It wasn't about as much who you know as the fact that your talent could contribute to the community. And here in New York City, that wasn't my experience. It wasn't about what your talent could contribute to the community. It was about what I as a person could contribute to the person who had the authority or power to give me an opportunity to share my talent with the community. Anyway, that just exacerbated everything, and I found myself ultimately on the street, homeless, doing crack cocaine, of all things. And from there, I was functional and remained functional for many years, and became a paralegal, worked at the New York Civil Liberties Union on a voluntary basis. Norman Siegel taught me how to shepherdize, and I got a job at Angel and Frankel bankruptcy law firm and clerked there, and eventually started my own paralegal business, went back to school. Fordham University's Harlem Extension, which was Malcolm King, was the name of the extension at that time. It was Ossie Davis School of Broadcasting and Video Communication, then called INCA, Institute of New Cinema Artists, formerly called Third World Cinema. They made the movie Claudine. That's the school I went to learn broadcasting and video communication. So I worked in radio at WBAI, hosting listeners' action on homelessness and housing, and my moniker was the Bowery Bum. I then traveled the country and did radio shows across the country, produced and hosted and wrote and the whole nine. But all that time I was drinking and smoking weed and sniffing cocaine and outside myself. All of that time, for the most part, I was outside myself. And even while being outside myself, I did not feel comfortable in my own skin because I had been wrestling with homosexuality from as far as I could remember. And the idea that it was something that wasn't going away, despite how much I prayed and how much I tried to ignore my inclination and attraction to other males. And so, and it didn't help that I had this really intense Christian background and upbringing. And I am actually an ordained elder in the Christian Methodist Episcopal Church, and I pastored 2 Baptist churches. Oh, wow, whatever. So lots and lots of experiences. Anyway, ultimately it all came to a head on May 10th, 2012, when I couldn't take it anymore. I was dying. Oh, I forgot to tell you. I was diagnosed with AIDS in 1989. I think it was 1989. I was about 26 years old, and I was told I had 5 years to live. And so, of course, everything just went to hell in the handbasket very rapidly. Well, needless to say, 22 or so years later, I'm still here, so don't believe the hype. The thing is, I'm still being, I take a medication protocol for AIDS treatment. But when I came here 2 years ago, back to New York from Arkansas, I told you I lived all over the country, just couldn't settle down, just couldn't find my place until now. And I'm so grateful that I have. But a big part of how I did that was I attempted suicide on May 10th, 2012, after getting high and getting high and getting high. And I couldn't stop, and I wanted to. And it was the one time that I felt like really trapped in a life that I didn't want. And I failed at that attempt, but I wound up in an ER room with a lot of psychiatrists and a lot of medical doctors who I wouldn't tell that I had taken an overdose of insulin, which I became an insulin-dependent diabetic as a result of not taking care of myself and using drugs, despite the fact that I knew I had an AIDS diagnosis, and wanting to die and thinking I'd never have a future. I had been married. I married when I was 33 and divorced 8 years later. A woman, because I have a history of bisexuality, but I'm more homosexually inclined. Anyway, making peace with me and accepting me for who I am was a big part of being able to live a life that didn't revolve around chemical substances. And a big part of getting there was a doctor named Georgina Osario, whom I met. She was working, I think, as an intern with Dr. Vanny Gandhi at St. Luke's Hospital here in New York City. And the two of them, 2 females, actually extended such love and affection toward me beyond my physical issues that they persuaded me through their sincere concern to go into rehab. And so I did at what is it called? It used to be, it has a couple of names. Anyway, whatever it is, it's Roosevelt Hospital here in New York City. And I didn't want to go because I didn't want to accept the fact that I had a substance use problem. I was an addict. And that meant to me, I had a weak mind, which was totally unacceptable in my world. It almost as unacceptable as the fact that I was homosexual. Where I'm from, neither of those are acceptable diagnoses. So if you're gonna stay alive, you got to medicate to not think about the reality that, hey, here are 2 real situations you have to deal with that your whole culture, your whole environment, your family don't accept and will not accept you if these are your diagnoses. And what happens when your own flesh and blood rejects you? Well, today, what happens